This isn't just an Audi Quattro. Oh no, it's way better than that. A short wheelbase Audi Sport Quattro. Which isn't just a PH hero car, my god, it's a full-blown icon if you're a child or even an adult of the 1980s. It wasn't the most successful rally car the company's ever built, but the road car it spawned was rarer and more powerful than any Quattro that has come before. Of course, the original Audi Quattro, so not this one, the long wheelbase one, completely redefined the rallying world. When I say completely, turned it on its head. Nothing had been seen that was like this before. Up until this point, rally cars were rear-wheel drive. But then Audi, because it had been working on some military vehicles with four-wheel drive, decided to put it in a road car. They saw the advantages in terms of safety for road cars, but also in its competition on its rally cars, adding extra traction over the rear-wheel drive cars that were out and about on the scene already. And it worked. So it built a Group 4 rally version of the Audi Quattro and entered it into the World Rally Championship in 1981. And it wasn't long before it started dominating the WRC. And when Group 4 became the infamous Group B, the Audi Quattro won the driver's title in 1983 and both the driver's and manufacturer's titles in 84. Group B rules also meant that just 200 cars were required for homologation though. And this inevitably led to wilder, more extreme cars. Think bespoke monsters like the Ford RS 200 and the Peugeot 205 T16. Remember to head over to PistonHeads.com after watching this video to research and buy your next car. Suddenly then, everyone else had caught up with Audi, not just building four-wheel drive cars, but also putting the engine in the middle of the car with a short wheelbase, so the car was more agile. And as we know, agility, just like traction, is everything in rallying. And Audi's answer was this, the short wheelbase Sport Quattro. Still based on an Audi 80, still not a bespoke car, but 320mm chopped out the wheelbase to make it more agile, to make it better on the rally circuit. We also ended up with bespoke panels. These were a mixture of Kevlar and glass fibre reinforced plastic, and also, according to some, carbon fibre, although I'll be honest, I haven't managed to confirm that, and it seems quite early for a car, especially when you think of F40s and stuff were Kevlar based, not carbon fibre based. It seems quite early, 85, to have carbon fibre in a car like this. So I'm not 100% sure about that, but anyway, it was lighter. So the bonnet, the front wings, the rear wings, the boot lid, the roof, all made of Kevlar or composite of some description. Right, I wanted to stop briefly, just have a little look underneath the bonnet of this car because I think it's what makes it so special. We've already talked about things like the Kevlar body panels, and the bonnet is made of Kevlar, so it's very lightweight, but there are little details too, like the fan shroud here, which is also made of Kevlar. And then we've got the bespoke touches like the intercool and the radiator that are really properly chunky, and you can see all the welding around each one. It's not particularly pretty, but great for competition use. And another thing that was part of the competition element of the car also was the chassis strengthening. So we've got a massive chassis strengthening bar here between the two suspension turrets, and then either side of the chassis legs here we've got these massive struts which all really just firm up the front of the car. And not only was there a new chassis, but also a new engine for the car as well. So an Austrian man called Dr. Fritz Indra joined Audi from Alpina in 1979 and became the head of their engine department. And he took the 2.1 litre 5-cylinder engine that was in the previous car and developed an all-new lighter alloy block for it, as well as a 4-valve cylinder head, so it now had 20 valves. And making it lighter was so important for the car because Audi knew that with the engine stuck right out there, right out the front, beyond the front axle, it couldn't compete with the mid-engine cars. This car was just prone to understeer, so they had to get weight out the nose, which is why they designed that all-new engine. And that meant that what we ended up with is a car that weighed 1,270 kilograms, even as a road car like this, with road car frilly bits, which is quite light, really. Especially because the 20-valve engine had now got this whopping great turbocharger, so it was hugely powerful. I mean, the competition cars were producing 500 horsepower, give or take, and in fact the last iterations, I think they were called the Series 2, were something like 600 horsepower, so mesmerisingly powerful cars. And you're now probably thinking this is all leading up to another tale of Audi world domination in rallying. Well, no, that's not exactly what happened. You see, the short wheelbase Sport Quattro wasn't actually that successful as a WRC car. In the 2 years it competed in Group B, it was blitzed by the Peugeot 205 T16, which took the titles in 85 and 86. But that doesn't mean the Sport Quattro was a failure though, because it blitzed the Pikes Peak in 1985 with a lady called Michelle Mouton, and again in 1987 with the Great Walter Roll at the wheel. But as far as Group B was concerned, we never got the chance to find out whether success was to come. Group B's last year was 1986, and it was a horrible year. First, there was a terrible accident at the Rally of Portugal when an RS200 left the stage and hit a group of spectators, killing 3 of them and injuring another 30. And then Corsica happened. Henry Toivonen's Lancia Delta S4 flew off the road, plunged down a mountainside and burst into flames. He was killed, and so was his co-driver Sergio Cresta. And within hours of the crash, Jean-Marie Balestre, who was the president of the governing body, had banned Group B rally cars for the following season. The most powerful rally cars ever had become simply too powerful. But what that left us with was a beast of a road car. Now, these cars didn't have 500 horsepower, but they did have 306 horsepower and 258 pounds-foot of torque. And they were reliable too. These weren't fragile cars. This engine is said to run on dynos for 24 hours at 7,000 RPM and still didn't blow up. But more importantly than that, they were fucking fast. I mean, properly quick. 0 to 60, 4.8 seconds. 4.8 seconds. Like, that's ridiculous. And that wasn't some dreamed up figure. That was tested by Autocar. And they also tested it doing 0 to 100 in about 12 seconds too. This was 1985. Those figures were unheard of. So few cars could do 0 to 60 in sub 5 seconds back then. And the idea of all that performance in a car like this, a car so ordinary, must have seemed so extraordinary. I mean, you would expect it in a Lamborghini or something like that. But here, no, when you put your foot down, you just don't expect that level of performance. And let's talk about that performance, because that's what we're dwelling on here. That's the heart of this car. There is lag like you wouldn't believe. This is proper 1980s Gordon Gekko braces, massive mobile phone, that sort of lag. And I'm going to demonstrate it to you now because it's funny. So I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to do 3rd gear, so that's 2,000 RPM. Waiting. Oh, hang on. 4,000, boom! Now we're off. Jesus Christ, that's fast. That is properly fast. And it's like, it really is all or nothing with this car. You just get that moment where it's just nothing, waiting, and then it just goes. It's fast. It's fast by 1985 standards, but it's fast by today's standards too. But look at it, just feels like a nice car in here, nicely trimmed. We've got leather across the top of the dashboard. I think it's leather, might be vinyl, looks a bit like vinyl in places, but other places leather, we'll call it leather. And it's all stitched nicely around the centre console here. And then we've got these wonderful Recaro seats. Typically 80s velour, has to be velour in the 80s, but massive bolsters. And then we've also got adjustable seat squab here, and then these 2 adjustments, top and bottom for the seats, are not just lumbar. Neither of those seem to work anymore, never mind. And then the dials, just again, simple, ordinary Audi dials, just a few more of them. So we've got voltmeter, obviously speedo and rev counter and fuel gauge, and then right smack bang in the middle there, the boost gauge, the all-important boost gauge. And then across here, oil temperature, coolant temperature, and oil pressure as well. And then we've got some luxuries like heated seats, all lovely. And then there's a radio blanking plate here, but there was a radio, I think, because there's an aerial at the back of the car. And then we've got this switch here, Ein ABS aus, which I think translates directly to an ABS out, which means you can turn the ABS off. Because what you don't want is the ABS cutting in on snow or loose gravel, the kind of things where you're going to extend the stopping distances rather than make them shorter. The final thing I want to just show you is the pièce de résistance, which is the diff locking thing. So you just pull this plunger out, that locks the diffs front and rear. And the nice thing is that when you push it back in again, it's pneumatically operated, so you can hear it hissing and wheezing as it just unlocks all the diffs again. I think that's fantastic. And then there's the ride. Now, this is an old car, very old car these days, but it's not an uncomfortable car in the least. The ride is thumpy, it's noisy. I can hear it bashing over the bumps. But in terms of the comfort aspect, you can see, hopefully you can see, I'm sitting here and I'm not bouncing out the seat. It absorbs everything. It's got such a lot of wheel travel. The thing is so jacked up. It's not a, it's not a road car as such. It's more, because it was built for rallying, it's got a lot of ride height. And therefore it can absorb all the bumps. But the body control, for an old car like this, is just blooming marvellous. Like, you can hammer it along these roads and they're quite challenging, they're quite undulating, and it's never once running out of ideas. It's not hitting the bump stops in a compression, or it's not losing contact with the wheels over a crest. It's just with you all the time. And I like the way it steers as well. It's kind of slow to begin with, but once you just get past that, it really wakes up nicely. Look, through there, I've got loads of weighting into it. There's not a huge amount of usable feel, I would say. If I hit a cat's eye, it kind of ricochets through the wheel and you think, oh, that's great, I'm going to get all that kind of feel coming through from the road surface, but you don't really, you don't get the coarseness of the road. So it's kind of difficult to sort of feel when it's pushing into understeer. But I'll be honest with you, so far the grip is so astonishing that I haven't really managed to get it to push into understeer, and it definitely hasn't felt like it's going to oversteer at any point at all. Oh, just listen to that. Just listen to that. That is fabulous. So what don't I like about the Sport Quattro? Beautiful through there, wonderful. Bit of roll, but no, it's just fabulous. Right, I don't like the gearbox. It's a long throw, not particularly satisfying, and it feels like, not just a long throw, but it feels like the bushes have seen better days. So I reckon, don't know, maybe when it was newer it probably would have felt better, but it's not the most satisfying change in the world. And another thing that I'm not sure is specific to this car or whether it's historic to the Audi Sport Quattro in general, but my God, it is hot. It is so, so hot in here. I'm sweating. I'm sure I look like I'm sweating to you on camera, and there's nothing I can do about it. If I turn the fans on, because I can't turn the heat off, they just carry on pumping out hot air. And it's just, I'm not Prince Andrew. I do sweat, and I'm sweating a lot now, and it's not very comfortable. I feel like I'm in a blooming moving sauna. But anyway, other than that, it's a great car. It's a fabulous car. The Sport Quattro is now so rare and so expensive, because if you can find one at all, don't be surprised if you're paying around £500,000 for one. So what an absolute privilege it's been, not just to drive it a little bit, but live with it for a few days and really get under its skin. So what's the experience revealed about this manic, lunatic car built for the craziest age of rallying? Well, that it's actually really quite civilised. It doesn't feel that special most of the time, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just so like any other Audi of the period, except better. It's not the sloppy old car you might have expected it to be, because it steers nicely, the brakes are brilliant, and it's just so easy to live with, apart from obviously the heat. But there's a flip side to the Sport Quattro that goes beyond its everyday usability, and that's what makes this car really special. And that's its savage attack mode that would have been so crazy at the time, because it's still so flipping crazy now. It's an extraordinary car from an extraordinary period in history. But a tragic period too, we shouldn't forget that. People died as a result of how crazy these cars have become in competition. But while acknowledging that, we can also appreciate that this car is part of the legend that was Group B and the warriors that it spawned. And the Audi Sport Quattro is definitely one of those awesome warriors. We really hope you've enjoyed this video from the PistonHeads Heroes series, and don't forget to like and subscribe to see more hero cars and also car reviews. And when you've done that, leave a comment to share your memories with us of the Sport Quattro.